Greetings. I am Tom Earl. I know you could be anywhere, so the fact that you are here today sharing your greatest gifts, your time and energy, it means the world to me. I hope you know that in this moment you are valued, you are loved, and you are appreciated just as you are. My friends, I have a new series for you. This is called the Listening Deeper or the Re-Listen series. You can call it either one. I know I am. Now, you may have heard this intro before. We are using the same intro for this series. So have no fear if you're listening to this again and thinking, oh, I've heard this episode before. Don't worry. Same great intro. Absolutely amazing new podcast. So feel free to hit the skip 30 seconds if you've heard this before. But if this is your first time hearing this, welcome, my friends. What we are presenting to you over these next episodes is really some deeper listenings or some re-listens to some of our most requested, some of our most listened to, some of my favorite episodes that we've done. Now, we have put out over 300 episodes since this has started. That means all the way back to 2016, I've put out one episode a week, every single week without fail since 2016. That means there's a lot of really awesome interviews, solo episodes. There's some really great things in there that you probably haven't heard if you're just joining us, or even if you're a longtime listener. So what I want to do is pull together a number of my favorite ones and your favorite ones that you have listened to or that have been listened to before you. And I want you to either hear them fresh for the first time or give them a re-listen yourself. I'm telling you, I have re-listened to each of these and really just thinking about where I was in my life then or the wisdom from then that applies to now, because some of these are going to be from 2016. Some are going to be from last year. Some of them are going to be, weeks before everything that went down in 2020. So I want to share these with you as a gift going into the time vault of our episodes. And really, I invite you to go through these with new ears, with new hearts, because we are new people here in this moment. Now, I invite you to let me know if you listen to it, what year do you think this week's episode was from? And I'd love to hear your thoughts. My friends, I look forward to sharing this Listening Deeper as we re-listen series with you. Let us jump into this week's re-listen. Here we go. Greetings, I am Tom Earl, and this is my year of depth. As you can see, I am alone today, no guests, just me and you. Here's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about the unexpected gifts of failure. We live in a culture that wants to build the pedestals and the monuments for successes and then ignore the failures, that doesn't want to affirm until we have proven our worth and wants to shun and ignore in those journeys of struggle. It is impossible to achieve inward or outward success without going through the fire of failure. And yet, because of our culture, because of the way we are taught to link our self-worth, our self-confidence, our self-esteem, our image of self to what we can externally accomplish and demonstrate in a tangible way our success, because these things are linked, when we fail, it means the opposite. If your success and self-worth and self-image is attached to how much external success you can demonstrate and amount, well, then failure means you need to detract from your self-worth, your self-esteem. And so when we fall down, especially in a way that invites any sort of ridicule, rejection, or people remembering that failure, we beat up on ourselves. And so for many of us, we have an unhealthy relationship with failure rather than a celebratory and participatory relationship with failure. Let's jump into a quote here. This comes from David Goggins in his book, Can't Hurt Me. We're going to be reading a little bit of it here today. And he says, "In life, there is no gift as overlooked or as inevitable as failure. There's no gift as overlooked or inevitable as failure. What are the gifts that failure can teach us? We know many examples throughout history of people who would have never discovered that magic thing unless they went through many failures. I know famous Dave's barbecue sauce for my friends in the Midwest. Growing up on that barbecue sauce. I know for me, I grew up on that barbecue sauce. It was my grandma's favorite. And we're going to tell this story in more depth on another podcast. But for him, he had started many businesses and would achieve success in them. And then something would happen that would crush those businesses. And each time he got back up and started a new one, which ultimately is what led to his famous Days, which is what became his great success. But then, of course, even within that, a lot of challenges. So if we can embrace that failure is a gift rather than a detractor of who we are, it is going to make all the difference, not only in your outcome, but most importantly in the journey, in the ability to enjoy it as it goes on. So we're going to read a bit here from David Goggins' Can't Hurt Me, Master Your Mind, Defy the Odds book. Great book. Definitely there are going to be aspects of it, I know for my listeners, that are going to be a little bit outside of the realm of how you view the world. And yet I think that is a good thing. Take us a little bit outside of our comfort zone. But there's lots of gems that we can grab from here. So David Goggins, for those of you who don't know, Navy SEAL, he was a Ranger. He went through Navy SEAL BUD/S 3 times. He holds the world pull-up record. He is a ultra marathon and endurance runner. So for him, the feats of the body were testing grounds for him to master his mind. Really, really rough childhood, a childhood of abuse, trauma. And so this book, a lot of it is really about him processing his trauma through going within his own mind and seeing what are limiting beliefs that are holding me back from achieving everything I want to achieve. Great book. Can't Hurt Me, Master Your Mind, David Goggins. So what I want to read to you is this concept that he talks about here. Page 183 in the book, it goes like this. The human body is like a stock car. We may look different on the outside, but under the hood, we all have huge reservoirs of potential and a governor impeding us from reaching our maximum velocity. In a car, the governor limits the flow of fuel and air so it doesn't burn too hot, which places a ceiling on performance. It's a hardware issue. The governor in the car can easily be removed, and if you disable yours, watch your car rocket beyond 130 miles per hour. It's a subtler process in the human animal. Our governor is buried deep in our minds, intertwined with our very identity. It knows what and who we love and hate. It reads our whole life story, informs the way we see ourselves and how we'd like to be seen. It's the software that delivers personalized feedback in the form of pain and exhaustion, but also fear and insecurity. And it uses all of that to encourage us to stop before we risk it all. But here's the thing. It doesn't have absolute control. Unlike the governor in an engine, ours can't stop us unless we buy into its bullshit and agree to quit. I love this concept right here that, in other words, this thing on a car called a governor basically prevents you from, when you buy a car from the lot, if you will, it prevents you from just being able to start driving 130 miles an hour down the road, which is a great thing. But it's really just this hardware thing. It's not that the car can't do it. It's that there is this thing artificially on top that prevents it from doing it. So if you go in and you remove the governor, zoom, you're off to the races. You can go 130 miles an hour. So I love the analogy how David applies this to our own lives. And he talks about how our governor is this intertwining of our identity, of our emotions, of the stories we tell ourselves, of our ego, of the way we see ourselves, how it starts to become this personalized governor that in the form of pain and exhaustion, fear and insecurity, that it holds us back. So in other words, he is running these endurance races, right? And so he's talking about how he'd get to mile 80 of a 100-mile race and his body would say, stop, you can't do this, right? So it's very kind of tangible for him. But for us, I see it a lot with entrepreneurs where we have content we need to put out, or you're going to ask for a raise, or you want to get out of a relationship that's negative, or you want to jump into a relationship that's positive, all these different things. Our governor then introduces exhaustion or fear or insecurity, or that voice in our head that tells us it won't work out. That is the mindset governor that stops us, especially when we buy into it. So I love that analogy. So he goes on in the book. I'm going back to the book, page 184, David Goggins, Can't Hurt Me. Sadly, most of us give up when we're only given around 40% of our maximum effort. Even when we feel like we've reached our absolute limit, we still have 60% more to go. That's the governor in action. Once you know that to be true, it's simply a matter of stretching your pain tolerance, letting go of your identity and all your self-limiting stories so you can get to 60%, then 80% and beyond without giving up. I call this, David Goggins, I call this the 40% rule. And the reason it's so powerful is that if you follow it, you will unlock your mind to new levels of performance and excellence in sports and in life, and your rewards will run far deeper than mere material success. I love that. So for all of us, finding that ability when we reach that 40% threshold and our own governor, using our stories, using our limiting beliefs, using our identity, that it starts to hold us back. How can we find ways to emotionally, mentally, and we can move past the governor that's holding us back? And so I invite all of us, what are the ways that our own mind is holding us back from moving beyond our 40% potential into the 60, 70, 80, 90? What are, when you feel them come up, what are those limiting beliefs that hold us back? What's helpful for me is as I move through something, let's say I have a goal, I have a vision, I have a dream, and it could be big, it could be little, it could just be to be more consistent in something. And when I go to execute on that intention, when I go to move into, instead of it being a dream, into action, what are the thoughts that come up that are telling me not to? And if you can actually go ahead and write those down, you can start to see how those are thoughts that were put in your brain by someone else, by the society we live in, by our parents, by these people who don't believe in us, and that we have then taken on as our own beliefs and installed this, as David Goggins calls it, governor in our brain. I love that. I love that. I love that. So for you, what are the governors that hold you back from going beyond your 40%? I'm going to read here another passage from David Goggins' book. This is page 284 to 285 in Can't Hurt Me. So he talks about the importance of who we surround ourselves with and how this plays into our failure and how we deal with failure. So here we go in the book. A lot of us surround ourselves with people who speak to our desire for comfort. I'm going to run that back. Rewind. A lot of us surround ourselves with people who speak to our desire for comfort. People who would rather treat the pain of our wounds and prevent further injury than help us callous over them and try again. We need to surround ourselves with people who tell us what we need to hear, not what we want to hear, but at the same time, not make us feel we're up against the impossible. We're going to run that back again. We need to surround ourselves with people who will tell us what we need to hear, not what we want to hear, but at the same time, make us feel we're up against the impossible, but at the same time, not make us feel we're up against the impossible. So David says, my mother was my biggest fan. Whenever I failed in life, she was always asking me when and where I would go after it again. She never said, well, maybe it isn't meant to be. David continues, most wars are won or lost in our own heads. And when we're in a foxhole, we usually aren't alone. And we need to be confident in the quality of the heart, mind, and dialogue of the person hunkered down with us, because at some point we will need some empowering words to keep us focused. And he adds, and deadly. Y'all, reading this just makes me love my wife so much, Adora Wandu Earl, even more. She has, at so many times, I think of it, I can have the energy of a freight train and the self-assurance and confidence. And there have been times where she has, I say it, stepped on the tracks and been like, whoa, you are on a path, a mindset. You are doing something that if you continue this, let me be honest with you, it's not helping you. And I'm like, no, but what about this? But what about that? Can't you see this? Can't you see that? And she has that courage and love to give me that feedback. And at the same time, I know for myself, especially in the early days of my business, and by early days, I mean, that's so funny. Not just early days, as soon as a couple months ago, I'd say, oh man, I need to take this course or I need to hire this coach because I'm just not there yet. And she would always say to me, my wish for you is that you would see that you already have all of the tools you need, that you don't need someone external to give them to you. You already have what you need. And so in those times where I would come up against the walls of failure and feel inadequate, and instead of recognizing that I have the power, the creativity, the ideas already within me to move through this failure, I think I need something outside of myself. And she would come and remind me, just look within. I'm paraphrasing. She says it all much better than I do, but just makes me think of my gratitude for her. So one of the things that we're taking away from here is we all have that governor on our mind. And one of the ways that the governor either gets stronger and holds us back, or we can start to remove the governor, is by the people we surround ourselves with. And let's just say one more time, we need to surround ourselves with people who will tell us what we need to hear, not what we want to hear, but at the same time, not make us feel we are up against the impossible. People who won't say, maybe it's not meant to be, but instead when we fail, we'll say, when and where are you going to go after it again? We need to be confident in the quality of the heart, mind, and dialogue of the people we surround ourselves with. And so for you, who are you surrounding yourself with right now? Do those people have that quality of heart, mind, and dialogue to ask you when and where when you fail, instead of telling you, maybe it's not your time, especially when that's what you want to hear? Are they willing to tell you what you don't want to hear? So a good self-reflection, a great self-reflection for all of us. So let's just run that quote back one more time. In life, there is no gift as overlooked or inevitable as failure. David Goggins, Can't Hurt Me, Master Your Mind, Defy the Odds. Highly recommend the book, one of my faves. I, of course, was listening to it on Audible. So I was going through my Evernotes. So Evernotes, if y'all don't know, it's a way to organize your notes. So I was going through, looking at my notes, and I was searching the word failure to see what quotes, what passages, what things that I highlighted. From September 23rd, 2018, I came across an online writing workshop that I did. So for a long time, for many years, I hosted a live and online expression session on Zoom. And we started that around, I think, 2016 and did it right up until 2019. And the theme of the writing workshop was safe to fail. And so the writing workshop always concludes with us doing a free write. And so I found the free write and thought, let me read this to you. So just to share, this is unedited. So we all get a few minutes to do our free write, and you're not allowed to edit. You're not allowed to correct. You just, as soon as we say go, you write whatever is meant to come up. You put it down on paper. And I have not read this myself since September 23rd, 2018. So I'm curious to read it myself, to go through it with you and see, but I thought, let's read this to you all. So here we go. This is the poem I wrote called Safe to Fail. Here we go. I have never seen a flower grow stronger from a steady diet of self-criticism, and yet I've never seen a human grow without a steady diet of accountability. And so, what is the line between personal responsibility and locking oneself in a prison of shame, guilt, regret, self-hatred, and despair? Is the line bold and gold, obvious and glaring, or is it thin like a hair or a razor's edge? I have cut myself walking too close to the ledge and fallen. Is this failure? Are scars the remnants of a journey well walked, or steps that should never have been taken? Is there forgiveness? Is redemption possible? Is there such thing as someone's ability to change? What about a monster? Can their fangs and claws and roar become something more? Are we ready for that? Would we rather destroy that which we hate and fear, or see them transformed? Which feels better? Which is here? Is it easier to forgive others or myself? I know the biggest waste of time is spent judging myself, lamenting over what shouldn't have happened, ruminating like a cow, chewing and spitting out and chewing and spitting out, never digesting, never investing time in implementing lessons learned. If I am not suffering for my mistakes, does it mean that I have learned? Can you walk the path of failure with ease, or does this mean I'm failing at failing? Do all my poems need to end with grand and giant epiphanies? A good feeling? Maybe not. Maybe it's like breathing in and out, in and out. Yes, indeed. 2018, Tom Earl. Well done. I appreciated that. There's some lines in here. If I may be so bold as to affirm myself, is it easier to forgive others or myself? Ooh, I like that line. If I am not suffering for my mistakes, does it mean that I have learned? Can you walk the path of failure with ease, or does that mean that I'm failing at failing? Oh man, some nice things to think about here. Go ahead and let me know if something comes up for you around that poem. I'd like to tell you a story. When I was moving from Wisconsin to Florida back in the day, 2011, was journeying with my mom, and I believe we left on a Tuesday. I believe we left on a Monday or a Tuesday. And the night before we left, I had a going away party at my dad's. And by the time it was nighttime, right on the skin of my thumb, right, kind of where it meets the wrist, all of a sudden my skin started to flare up, and I got these huge blisters that took over a huge part of my, that part of my hand. And so somehow I had stumbled into poison ivy. And so my hands were itching like crazy, and they were all puffed up. And so we had to bandage my hands and put all this ointment, and I had to do the first journey with my hands elevated. So we had the car completely packed to the brim with all the things that I was going to move to Florida. My mom driving, me sitting in the passenger seat, because especially at that time I hated driving. So she was like, fine, I'll drive. And then we had my bike hooked up to a bike rack on the back. So this is the journey you take out of Wisconsin to Florida. This is the first part of it. You leave Wisconsin, you go through Chicago, out through Illinois, and then you get into Indiana. And when you get into Indiana, the speed limit becomes 70 miles an hour, which we all know everybody's going about 8-9 miles an hour over the speed limit. So they're going almost about 80. Now, 90% of the people who are on the road are huge semis. So basically envision this, 2-lane highway, freeway, whatever they're called, 2 lanes on each side. And these huge semis going 70 miles an hour down it. So I'm looking behind us, and I realize, oh my God, Mom, the bike is falling off of the bike rack. Everybody's worst fear, if you've ever had a bike on the back of the bike rack, This is always everybody's worst possible fear. So she pulls over and I go back with my hands just like bandaged and throbbing with pain. And I'm trying to tie this thing onto the bike, onto the back of my car, barely able to use my hands, where with these semis coming by at 75 miles an hour. So every time they come by, I almost fall over because of the wind. The car shakes. It is a disaster. My mom is probably fearing for my life. I can't imagine Jaima, even when she's 24, being out on a highway like that. And so we're like, we have to get off this highway. So we somehow tie it. I somehow tie it to the back of the car, and we drive off of the highway. And it was hilarious. So much hilarity ensued. The bike started to fall again. So my mom pulled over, and I got out of the car to fix it, but she forgot to put the car in park because we were both so panicked. So the car started like running away from me. It was just this whole thing. So we were like, this is not going to work. This bike rack is clearly broken. And so we were just sitting there on the side of the road, just trying to figure it out. So we actually saw there was a McDonald's just a little way up. So we pulled into a McDonald's, and this nice couple comes up, probably in their 80s. And he's like, I see the problem y'all have. Give me a second. So he goes in the back of his car, and he's got all these bungee cords and twine. And so he gets it hooked up to the back of our car as well. Now, this was back, at least in my life, I did not have an internet phone. My mom didn't have an internet phone. So this wasn't something we can just Google and figure out what we're going to do. So we went and walked to a post office that was nearby and just said, we need to ship this bike. What should we do? So this was a small town, right? Everybody kind of knows each other. So the post office says, go up to Ned's bike shop. So we drive up there, get to his bike shop, super friendly guy. We tell him we need to ship this thing. So he's like, I got it. So what he does, takes off all the duct tape, everything we used to get it onto the back of the car, and he brings it inside his shop, and he finds a box at a Specialized bike. That's the name of the brand, Specialized. So he goes and finds a brand new Specialized bike, pulls the bike out, takes my bike completely apart, puts it then in the box that the new one was in, tapes it all up, gets on his phone. Hey, Joe, can you bring your pickup truck down? Joe comes and brings his pickup truck down. They put the box into Joe's pickup truck, and then they said, follow Joe. We follow Joe. He takes the box for us to a UPS store that his buddy Mike or something runs. It's like, hey, Mike, can you help these good folks out? They weigh the bike, get it shipped. I think it was $200. And we're like, to the guy who drove it, can we give you some money for gas? No. We go back to the bike shop. Dude, you saved our life. Can we give you some money? No, just pay it forward. I mean, just telling it to y'all, if you can just imagine the stress of, I'm sitting here with these poison ivied hands. I got my whole life in this car. What are we going to do with this bike? We still got another 36 hours to drive. And before the internet, where you could Google where to find things, the post office just says, go here. And this person just takes the bike apart for me, packs it all for me, calls his friend with a pickup. They take it to the UPS because there's no way we were going to get that box into the car. It was just, it's even to this day, what is it, 10 years later? The human capacity for kindness. It was one of those unexpected gifts of a huge failure, because by all stretches of the imagination, your bike falling off of your car on the freeway an hour and a half into a 36-hour drive is a failure. And it became this thing that we just really got to see human beings shine. And that my mom and I continually laugh about and come back to. And we just say to ourselves, why didn't we try to ship this thing from the beginning? And it's because we had to go through that so that we could have this story. And so when you get a chance to have perspective when it comes to failure, when you have the opportunity to look back, the stories that you tell around the campfire, if you have campfires, I'm very country. We have campfires. Or to your family, or on podcasts like this. Really, the stories that we tell are adversities, failures, face plants that we overcame and somehow found the resilience to move through and to really see the gift that they were offering us all along. And so if you are in a failure right now, I'm not going to tell you the cliche that it gets better. What I'm going to say instead is to embrace and sit with the pain. Don't try to outrun it. Don't try to mask it. Don't try to put a fake layer of positivity on it. Instead, accept that this is where you're at with it. And then one step in front of the other. The easiest next step, that easiest next move, start to elevate and rise. And I hope that something you heard today serves as a reminder that this is going to become a story. But most importantly, this is a requisite of the journey. There is no getting around failure if we are to achieve or to reach or to bring to life the visions that we have. Don't overlook the gifts that failure is offering you right now. Being mindful of the friends that we surround ourselves with. Oftentimes, my best friends that I have are the friends I find through books, through podcasts, through YouTube videos. I have amazing friends. I have an amazing family. And at the same time, I like to surround myself with those kind of people too, from my books, from podcasts. So guard your mind, be aware of what you let in and the way it influences you. My friends, you got this. Let me share with you an invitation. I invite you right now to think of what is a failure that you have experienced recently. Write it down if you can, but bring it up for sure. And I want you to throw it a party. I want you to celebrate that failure. I want you to connect the dots. If you would not have failed, the lesson that you wouldn't have gotten to learn. If you didn't fail, the gem, the gift, the jewel, the insight, the iteration, the pivot that you would have missed out on. My business right now, we are experiencing wonderful highs. And within those highs, we have had many, many, many lows. So many times I have put something out there thinking this is going to be it, and it failed spectacularly. And that failure is what allowed me to go deeper and to see what is it that I really want to do, and how can I communicate this in a way that adds value. And if it would have went right from the beginning, I wouldn't have had the chance to arrive at where I am now. And I'm so grateful for where I am now. And I know there will be many more failures that I will forget about all of this. I'll be saying, oh, who said anything about failures? Awesome. This sucks. And so this is also not just an episode for you, but it's a time capsule for myself. But friends, let me know if you're willing to. What was something that resonated with you, that stuck out to you? What was something that you appreciated or that meant something to you? Or what was something you'd like to push me on further? Tom, I'd like for you to rethink this. I'd be more than happy to receive that feedback, that affirmation, that accountability. Tom@tomearl.com or at Tom, T-O-M, Earl, E-A-R-L. Artist is all of my social media. And if there's any way we can support you with your marketing, just let us know. What we got for you is a free Facebook ads bootcamp, tomearl.me/FB as in Facebook, FB ads. We have a bootcamp there for you, the psychology of marketing. And then we also go through our entire system we use. This has been such a blessing getting to talk to you about failure, my friends. As always, I'm wishing you peace and blessings.
Thank you.
I want to thank you for listening to this week's Deeper Listening, Re-Listening series. I don't know how many more times I can squeeze in the word listening into this sentence. Want to thank you, as I shared in the beginning, for sharing your time and energy listening to this entire episode. As I said at the beginning, I'd love to know, do you know what year this episode was recorded in? And I'd love to know what stuck out to you, what moved you, what questions do you have? And if you have any suggestions for what you'd like future topics to cover or future guests we should feature. My friends, I look forward to you joining us again next week for a new episode in our Re-Listen series. And as always, I'm wishing you peace and blessings. Thank you.
One more thing. I'd love to continue the conversation. Feel free to join me at tomearl.com/join. Subscribe below, or let's connect on social media. Tom Earl Artist. Thanks again for watching.